It's 7 o'clock in the evening on Tuesday night. I'm Martin Evans, and welcome to the CCR May meeting. This evening, we're going to run through a series of slides as we usually do, and I'm going to do something a little bit different as we go through, but this was a shot from our condo at Panama City Beach, fog at the beach. We wanted to thank Ann Savage for her presentation of restoring old photos, and I don't do much of that, and we'll see if you can. We had a good presentation, a good attendance of our board tonight, and I wanted to go through and have the members of the board stand up so that we can see who they are. Jane is here, is vice president, and Jerry Posano as secretary. I saw Jerry's in the back. Doug, I did not see.
I'm standing at home.
Oh, good, good. Welcome, Doug. Joe Ring is here with activities. Michael Bryant is here at the, without his cast or whatever that thing was. Oh, good. Kim Davis, Kim Davis is here. Marianne Barnhart. Online, okay, she's waving, okay. Pat Davis, I saw, yep. Susan Reed, back in the corner. Paul is here with the computer. Michael Orr, I saw somewhere, yep. Karen Davis is here as always. Terry Troxel. And Carolyn Hare. Oh, she is, great, great.
Harold is online.
And Harold, great. What a turnout. Wonderful. But I thought that you would want to get to see that's the group that you voted on last go round. New members, Kurt. I saw, yep. Any guest? Okay, great. Welcome. Jane, any comment other than what's up here? Shadows, the assigned subject. So find some shadows and put them in and go from there. I think Doug said that we were all paid up. Didn't I hear that last time? And Kemp, any comment about just what's here? All right.
Yes, they are.
Oh, good. Thanks, Doug. Yeah, it's great. And Michael, 3 in-person evaluators, Rumley, Fisk Taylor, and Kevin. Any comment other than what's up there, Michael? Thank you very much. And Pat, remember the public library thing in August, Glen Allen Cultural Arts Center, that was initially posted for July, but that has been moved to September. And VCU is at the end, so get your prints ready and we'll look forward to doing that. Any other comment on that, Pat? Michael, thanks for sticking this in there.
Yeah, so I'm the new communications person. Thank you for voting me in, and you'll probably regret that in a couple of months, but what can you do? I set a really low bar as the assistant to Paul here and wanted to put in a plea for somebody to step up and help Paul out like I said, I set a pretty low bar, so you should be able to impress everyone. But I wanted to share this photo just really quick. I was in DC for an event, and I had this side dream, so to speak, of getting the perfect reflective shot of the Washington Monument. And I go out to the Lincoln Monument. I pay my respects to the spot where Martin Luther King Jr. stood, and I turn around, and this is what I see. Instead of Forrest Gump yelling, Jenny, I see this little sled of construction equipment in his spot. But I took the picture anyway. And that's the message. It's like when you go out, right? It's just the setting is not always what you expect it to be. The animals don't cooperate, whatever it is. But you got to still take the shot, because you know what? I now have one of the rarest photos of the Washington Monument, I think, of any of us, right?
Yep.
And if I ever need to show somebody what leading lines are,
That's it. That's great. It's moving goalpost. Yep. Karen, any comment? It's all here. End of the year thing on YouTube. Just as an aside, Rumley is here next month. He's a wonderful technical critiquer, and he's very, very good. And there are many YouTube videos on our website and on other websites about how he critiques and some hints about how to make your image better. Might go from there. Paul, any
Yeah.
comment?
Yeah, I'll just echo what Michael was saying. And if those of you in the room, you can kind of see he's properly demonstrating how an assistant helps. So I think he's doing a great job right now. So you can see what it takes to do this job. So don't be intimidated. So just need help tearing up, setting down, or tearing down, setting up. We're doing both. And interacting with Zoom participants in case there's an issue, and passing the mic around when they're, so I can stay here and be stationary, or go on vacation, and maybe miss a meeting, gasp, and I'll provide training, and I can end up in the hospital. Who knows? I'm not going to say that, but we need backup. So please, I have everything written down, and you can see I've got little labels on every cable, and A goes to A, B goes to B, C goes to D, just like that, or D goes to D. Yeah, that is all.
Terry, the second one, Zenfolio has been archiving the galleries. All galleries from 2015 are now available without a waiting period. And that's a big deal, because if you use Zenfolio and you don't have that feature and you click on a gallery, it will say, we'll get back to you in 24 hours. It was very irritating. So that's much better. And a reminder, if you go buy new equipment online, you have to start that process by saying a link to us on the web. Right? You can't get to the bottom line and then add it. Is that correct? Right. Yep.
We've lost sound.
Linda was saying for the people online that if you're just looking around at B&H and you find something of interest, you essentially back out and then come back in under the link to us, and that gets us the 2% credit, which okay, add it to your card and then you go back. it'll recognize your cart as being linked to our site. But try to do that because 2% of big money is a big help for the club.
Hang on, hang on.
Hang on. Oh, wait, I got it.
All the way.
This is why we need an assistant. Pass the mic.
My question, Terry, is, does it just have to be camera equipment? Or if you bought a computer there, could you back out and go right back in?
The answer is yes.
Hey, Paul, we don't have any sound.
They won't speak into the mic. I can't help it.
Okay, gotcha.
And at the end of the magazine as well, you'll find the link to B&H and you can go through that way or go through the website, right?
Yeah. So what we were saying, Mary Ann, and for those online, is it's really important to realize that no matter what you buy, a computer, a hard drive, flash drives, and so on, from B&H, anything that you buy will get a 2% as long as you start from our webpage.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Joe, Marianne, any?
I just wanted to remind everybody that the Lightroom Virtual Summit starts on June 1st, and that's through Dave Cross. I think I put it on Facebook. If not, you could just go to lightroomsummit.com and you can get a free pass, and it's 4 days of a lot of really great speakers.
Joe?
Just check the meetup page, the Camera Club's meetup page. There is a DIY, a do-it-yourself on there, Memorial Day weekend. The polo games start at King's Family Vineyards. It's going to be every Sunday till October, weather permitting. So just check that link. There's a link to their website to see if they're playing or not. It's free.
Jerry? Any other comment? Nope. Tonight's presentation, Rob Sabatini, Wild Things Near and Far. Welcome. I'm going to give you this.
The VCU for my dental, and Rob Sabatini is one of the instructors down there, at least for another month. And my student was working on me, and I said, "Don't you have somebody on staff that's really a good photographer?" And she goes, "Oh yeah, Dr. Sabatini." No, you got that one? So here he is.
Is this at the right level? Can you all hear me pretty good in the back? Thank you. Yeah. Okay, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for all showing up tonight and also the people online. This is a real honor for me. I think I was in the Camera Club of Richmond many years ago and got busy with other things and thought I would come back. I came back for one session last year and had a great time. So it's been an honor to be invited. And I kind of have a feeling that there's other people doing what I do in this room, just looking at the demographic. So hopefully there's something for everyone here. And to answer Jane, the students all know that I'm a photographer because when you're the teacher up in front of the room, you get to do whatever you want. So I have a captive audience of 100 people that have to look at my wildlife pictures before I start talking about periodontics, which is what I do. So the name of my talk tonight is Wild Things Far and Near. And I'll give you a brief story of my life. It doesn't look like much. It all happened in just a few steps. But I was born in the, where's the pointer? Okay. Okay, so yeah, it is. I come from the Bronx, New York, and I grew up there for my first 20 years. Didn't get to see much wildlife there, so I have a delayed start in the photography. But at the age of 20, I came down to Richmond to attend the VCU School of Dentistry, known as MCV to a lot of us in this room. Graduated from there and wasn't quite sure where to go, so I went in the Air Force for a 3-year commitment, thinking it would be a nice in and out, and ended up staying 24 years in the Air Force and became Colonel Sabatini. Then I got recruited to get back out, and where did I go? Back to VCU, thinking I'd do maybe five years there, and I'm just finishing up my 21st year. So I'm getting ready to retire on the 1st of June, which means I have less than 3 weeks to be Dr. Sabatini out at the school. And then I go back to where I started from to be Mr. Sabatini again. You know, somewhere in that last phase at VCU, I started to realize this is my second career. I'm winding down a little bit. I have more time on my hands, eventually went to a 3 days a week work week. And financially, things were looking okay. You never know, but so far so good. And decided that this is a good time to really get a good hobby. I work with a lot of professors who are well into their 70s, some in their 80s. One was even 92 when he finally stopped. And I think I wanted to make sure that I had some activities to do, just like probably everyone in this room can relate to that. My path toward the wildlife, and can I just see how many people like think they're wildlife photographers in the room? So yeah, so just about everybody. That's great. So just like you guys, I had an early love for not Ken Conger, but for animals. You know, growing up in the Bronx, it's concrete jungle, didn't get out much. Luckily, I lived about a mile from the Bronx Zoo, which was helpful. But other than getting out in the country every now and then to things like Boy Scout camp, I really didn't get much, some exposure to wildlife. I was always kind of interested in, there's Ken again, in photography. But I was frustrated by it. And I think probably a lot of us had similar experience where you're trying to do something with your camera and you're shooting film, send it away, and it comes back nothing like you really expected it to or wanted to. So things all started to come together, I would say, in the early 2000s with the advent of digital photography. I'm really not good at this. Can someone work the pointer for me? Are you the assistant? Can you do the pointer? Yeah. Yeah. So the impact of digital photography was a really big step for all of us, and it was for me too, because I didn't have to go through the disappointment of film anymore. There was a good start down by the river. Good start down by the river with the great blue herons. You all probably remember the rookery that would be like 40 or 50 nests right there by the Mayo Bridge. And it was just such a great opportunity with herons coming down to fish, bringing fish up to the nest, to the chicks. And that combined with digital photography were great. But the third piece of the picture was mentorship. And we finally get to see Ken Conger here. Everyone know Ken, I'm sure he's spoken to the club many times. He was probably my first mentor in photography. I don't know why. Pretty much my first mentor, got me started in wildlife. He was a tremendous help in terms of getting gear. He was also already traveling and going to exotic places to do photography, which I became interested in. And he also has a sidekick that came with him named Jose. Does everyone know Jose Hernandez? He's done most of the trips with Ken, and they look like pretty rough guys, right? Like maybe SEAL team material. But they're two of the nicest guys in the world, and I always thought of them more like Don Quixote and Sancho Panza, the sidekick, just traveling to far off lands, you know, chasing their dreams. Okay, next slide. So from a hobby, it became a passion of mine, obviously. And the things I love about wildlife photography are that I'm outdoors more than ever. I'm learning a lot about the local environment, all the species, not only animals, birds, but also the plants and trees and things like that. But it's also given me some great travel opportunities. And with those came great friendships. And I think one of the most important things for me about this hobby was that it kind of fit in my way of thinking in my profession as well. You know that dentists are involved in making teeth, creating smiles, and there's a lot of art in that, believe it or not, and there's a heck of a lot of technology. And dentistry nowadays is also relying heavily on computer-based technology. And when you combine those things of art and all the technology and science that goes with dentistry, it's kind of like the ultimate right brain, left brain type job, right? And I guess my hobby fit right in line with my profession. So tonight I'm going to talk about travel versus local photography. And this talk is only going to be a little over an hour probably. So I could show you many trips that I've been on, but what I'm really trying to do is highlight the similarities and mainly the differences between these two types of photography, which have both been important parts of my life. This slide is from Brazil. It's a jaguar, and the cedar waxwing is a local subject. And the big question, should I stay or should I go? We could sing a song to that one. Someone always asks about gear. Probably you all have similar gear that I do. My bread and butter lens has always been the Canon 400 millimeter f2.8. I don't have a bigger focal length. I don't have a 600 millimeter or an 800. But I think this is, if you're going to pick one lens that just does just about everything, it gets you close enough. It's the greatest thing about it, obviously, is the 2.8. So this means that the lens opens wide up. You get two benefits of that, obviously. You get more light, so the lens is faster. You could shoot more in low light conditions. But also, it has a very narrow depth of field, as you know. So when you shoot a subject, that subject is going to be in focus, and everything behind it and everything in front of it is going to be out of focus. And this is what I love the most about that lens, and we call that bokeh, right? So bokeh means that you have a narrow depth of field where your subject is going to be in focus, but your subject is in focus, but everything behind it almost looks like a studio shot, like an Olin Mills type thing. And it really brings the subject out and makes it stand out. So bokeh is the key for me, and that's why I've stayed with the 600 for that long. This presentation, this is a warning that there may be some animal nudity involved and some animal adult situations. So if you see that little label, then you could just close your eyes for a minute. Okay, so we're going to start with far. And I think since I've been to Africa three times, I'm choosing Africa as sort of the example of a far destination. How many people have been to Africa here? Okay, so I think Africa is a great start for a travel photography place. It's a beautiful country. The accommodations are wonderful. The traveling is a little rough to get there, but once you're there, it's just a really fine place to be. These are some of the things about travel shooting that I love. You have great destinations. Usually you have very experienced guides, whether you're on land or in the water. The guides are very good at getting you in front of the subjects that you wanted to shoot. And Africa is a perfect example of that. You will find the animals that you wanted because of these guides. But in addition to that, travel shooting usually involves some type of a group, as some of you know. And the group mates on these trips, you just become very close. You learn a lot from them, and you actually make some good, lasting friendships. The best thing about going on these trips is that if you pick the right time of the year and the right travel company or guides, it's pretty predictable that you're going to be successful. And if you go to a place like Africa or South America on a guided trip, you're pretty much guaranteed to come back with a pocket full of really beautiful photos of the subjects that you were looking for. So these are some of the destinations I have been to, and you notice I was mostly from 2012 to 20. 2 trips to Africa, 3 trips, 2 to Kenya, 1 to Tanzania, and other trips sprinkled into Alaska, South America and Brazil, Florida, and New Mexico to Bosque del Apache. The example of Africa is a combination of my trips to Kenya and Tanzania. These are amazing locations, and basically it takes about a day to get there flying. But where we're going is in the east of Africa. This is Kenya in the pink, and then below it is Tanzania. So these 2 countries border each other. And when you're out there, you see that 2 of the main attractions, which are the Masai Mara in Kenya and the Serengeti in Tanzania, are actually connected. So whether you choose Kenya or Tanzania, you'll probably end up in this area and see some of the best wildlife that you will ever see. Usually flying into Nairobi, the trucks that have the guides will pick you up and go to some of these exotic locations. It's a real vacation when you go there. You're working hard in the day, out in the trucks looking for subjects to photograph, but in the evening you come back to either a nice hotel or some of these individual structures. Some of them are tents, some of them are small hard structures. Here you see the accommodations inside, whether you're in a hotel or a tent. It's pretty much 4 or 5-star African theme, very comfortable. And you can see this I think a hotel. This one is sort of semi, and this one is a tent. You see the tent and the screen window rolled up. In addition to the photography, it's nice to visit these countries and see some of the native populations. And that's certainly possible with tribes like the Maasai people. The Maasai are nomadic, so they build these tent structures out in the plains, and they're moved around based on where the water is. They have to follow the water because they have cattle that they're dependent on. The men are considered to be the hunters of the tribe. They do other things, but almost everything else is done by the women who do a lot of the cooking. They actually build some of the villages, the huts and things that they stay in. And in the daytime, when there are tourists around, they like to sell some of their wares. They're very happy when you come to visit them. So if you take one of these trips, make sure you do some kind of a little outing to visit the local natives. They're very happy about it, and some of them even might jump for joy to see you. Okay, so this is Amboseli Park. It's a great park for elephants, and I just wanted to show you, typically there's some type of a vehicle, whether it's a truck or some type of a van. They have big windows that you could shoot out of. They slide open. They also usually have a pop-up roof so that you could stand up and shoot from a higher angle. And the elephants are, like all the animals pretty much, are very used to the trucks and the people. And it's kind of like almost a safari park when you go there. There's no fences around it, but the animals are very accustomed to what's going on with the photography. This is a shot of Mount Kilimanjaro. It's oftentimes hard to see Mount Kilimanjaro because these clouds usually kind of cover it. Mount Kilimanjaro is in Tanzania, and I'm standing here in Kenya. looking across the border at the mountain. And I paid these guys a few dollars to get in the picture for me so it would look a little better. Tanzania is equally beautiful, a little bit greener throughout a lot of the country. And this area here is called the Ngorongoro Crater. It's a wonderful place, and you just kind of meander in on this road, drive down, and now you're in this big basin that's full of all kinds of wildlife, you know, the big animals, the birds, and everything. So another wonderful destination. Now, when you go to Africa, people are right away talking about, we're going to get the big five. What are the big five? And the big five are 5 animals that this terminology actually kind of goes back to the days of big game hunting, because these were the real trophies that the hunters wanted to get. One of them, obviously, is the lion. The lions are obviously beautiful creatures. These are all males. And you can see that different areas, actually, the lions might have a little bit different look to them. This is a lion that's from the Lake Nakuru area. And there's a special pride of lions that have these wonderful flowing manes. And we followed one of these guys around, and after an hour or so, we were calling him Elvis because of his wonderful hair. This is a Masai Mara male elephant. And the activity of the elephants is kind of low in the daytime. It's very hot and sunny. And in the evenings and early mornings is when we got some of our better shots of the cubs. These cubs are nursing and also snuggling down for the night. Another one in the big five is the leopard. The leopard is magnificent, strong-looking animal. They're not out in the fields quite as much, so they're a little bit harder to find. And they tend to aggregate around the wooded areas. And I'm sure you've all seen pictures of these beautiful beasts carrying antelopes and things that weigh much more than they do, dragging them by the neck up into the tree to protect it from being stolen by other animals like hyenas. So this is a pretty good leopard shot right at eye level, and was lucky to find one up in a tree as well. Now, the cheetah is my favorite, and I feel kind of gypped that it's not in the big five. So I call it the big six, and I'm going to count cheetah as my favorite animal out there. They're just very beautiful. They're sleek. They're very fast, and they're great hunters. And I just love the cheetah. And these are a couple of cheetah kits that were just playing one afternoon. And we were very lucky to get a picture of that. This is another cheetah. And when this scene started, the cheetah was way out there in the parking lot somewhere. And he was gradually just stalking toward this little herd of zebras. He was low to the ground, and he was just stalking. And all of a sudden, he just bolted and took off. And he made a beeline across the room here and ended up making this turn right toward the zebras. And what he's looking for right at that moment is to see like a baby zebra, or a zebra that looks like it's having trouble or is sick or something like that. And he would have gotten that if that was the case. But this guy, when he made the turn, all he saw was a nice bunch of healthy zebra butts, and he decided to call off the chase, and it ended right there. But it's still a pretty dramatic photo. Another one of the big five is the Cape buffalo, or the water buffalo. Very majestic creature, can be dangerous because of their size and speed. This one out in the field was looking pretty. And what I wanted to show here was one of the symbiotic relationships that exists. And we have examples of this in our own country. But these are called yellow-billed oxpickers. And their habitat is the backsides of these big, large animals like the Cape buffalo, and others like rhinos and even elephants. And you see them up there, and what they do is they diet off of the ticks and insects that live on the Cape buffalo. I think the Cape buffalo is mostly great for that, maybe not when one is sitting on his nose right between his eyes. But overall, I think they're pretty happy to have the oxpickers in the picture. Elephants and all the major parks are rich in elephants. Obviously, we've all heard about poaching and people trying to get the tusks. I think they're slowly maybe getting a handle on that. And we were lucky to see some for some nice portrait shots, some nice herd shots, and the herds are very matriarchal. It's usually the older female elephant and younger females and males. But once the male is adult breeding age, they sort of leave the herd and travel more independently. This guy was especially interesting. He walked right up to this acacia tree, put his trunk around it, and was literally shaking the tree back and forth. And I had no idea what he was doing, but later found out that these acacia trees have nuts. And I think he was just kind of shaking himself a snack off of the tree. Pretty fascinating. The last of the big five is the rhino. There are two rhinos, a white rhino and a black rhino. This is a white one. Notice he's carrying some of the ox pickers around. And the other really large animal are the hippos. Didn't get too many great opportunities to photograph them, but they do a lot of this kind of fighting. And not many people realize, but the hippos are probably the most dangerous animal, and the most fatalities in Africa are caused by hippos. They are deceptively fast, and they're extremely strong. And, you know, when you get in a situation like this where they're putting you right in front of these beautiful creatures, you know, you're just snapping away, and you have to take a step back and think, okay, let's try and find something to create some art and something different other than just the snapshots of the different animals. So I saw these zebras posing like that, and yeah, this shot is a little bit photoshopped because there was some greenery back there behind them. But just to make it an art piece, taking the color out and making it strictly black and white, I think makes it a really nice picture to hang on the wall. Another example of a picture that I consider artistic is this one of the zebra, who is at sunrise, okay? And the shot was made using a very low exposure, which lit up the sunlight into this very misty scene with where you could see the dust and the rays of sun. And this was one of my favorite shots of that trip. Of course, there's about 5 different kinds of giraffes, and you see plenty of giraffes. They're wonderful to photograph. If you're lucky, you'll see a pride of baboons, and the baboons some of them are very old and wise looking. Some of them are the younger crowd, and this was really lucky shot to get the youngster riding on the back of his mom. He's just going along for the ride. Looks like he's maybe eating some M&Ms or something on the way. Plenty of monkeys in Africa too, as you know. These are called vervet monkeys, and this is a Sykes monkey. When I first put this presentation together, I showed it to the vervet monkeys, and they were pretty amazed by the whole thing. You could see the expression on their face. The Sykes monkey, not so sure, but he probably enjoyed it too. Antelopes of all different types. This is a wildebeest and an impala, a topee. This is a very fast little Thompson's gazelle, and the dik-dik. The dik-dik is an antelope that only stands about 2 feet high. So if you imagine how little this is next to that bush. And they're known for always traveling in pairs. They mate for life. And we were told that when one of them dies, the other one usually dies shortly after that. I'm probably the only person who's been to Africa 3 times and wasn't able to get a pair of dik-diks, even though they're always together. And this was a guy who happened to be alone that day. You see a lot of animals that you've never heard of before. I certainly wasn't familiar with animals like the pygmy mongoose, these tiny little mongoose. This is called a bat-eared fox, which I had never really read about or heard of before. Oh, I see. It's not showing up. Okay. So the bat-eared fox on the upper right, and the lower is a kind of a medium-sized cat called a caracal. Very exotic looking with kind of pointy ears like a lynx or even a bobcat. And this guy turned around to give me a look as we were about to leave. You could tell one eye, I think his left eye, was probably damaged in a fight. Can you all see the pointer at all? Anybody? I just can't tell. Okay.
just can't see it online.
Oh, online. I got you. Okay. So here's another fun part of Africa trip. You're always looking for scenes from the Fight Club. A lot of these animals with antlers and horns, sometimes it's part of their mating rituals. Sometimes they're just sparring. And the young ones, they're probably just doing play that will turn into real behavior later. So upper left, you see some Cape buffalo with an audience of a cattle egret, just like the cattle egrets here. These are two wildebeests fighting up in the upper right-hand corner. In the lower left, you have two impalas, and they didn't really look like they were too aggressive. They were just sort of doing a gentle sparring. And these are actually baby elephants that were kind of play fighting. The other thing that I didn't expect about Africa was the vast array of birds and exotic birds. I mean, people go to South America to do bird trips and things like that. You could literally go to Africa just to do a bird trip. This is only barely scraping the surface of what you might see. And these are some of the classic beauties, like a lilac-breasted roller in the upper left. In the upper right, you see birds of paradise. You see here a kingfisher, much like our kingfishers here, called a malachite kingfisher. And on the lower left is this exotic bird that I used to never could remember the name of it. It's actually called a gray-bellied spurfowl. And spurfowl is the one that I could never remember until last week when I was looking at these pictures and the NBA playoffs were on and San Antonio Spurs were playing and they were committing tons of fouls. So that's where I was able to put that all together and remember that this bird on the lower left is actually a gray-breasted spurfowl. And some of the bigger birds are really popular in Africa. On the left side, you have a bird called a secretary bird. They're very fun and run around the plains along with the crowned crane in the middle. Very funny looking bird, especially when he's making that face. And a bird called the ground hornbill on the right. These are a little bit harder to see. And this guy was out trying to catch some game for the nest. He came out with a bill full of frogs and toads and lizards and anything you could think of. Pretty amazing sight. So I showed this a bit early, but you can see from a trip like this that even a primate with a Canon camera can get really good pictures like this on these African trips, and it is a self-portrait. And even the Nikon shooting primates can get some good pictures in Africa. Okay, so that closes out my travel. That closes out my travel part of this little presentation. And the things I take from that are that it's a great vacation. You're going to get great photos. In terms of skill, maybe you work on your skill a little bit, but you're not going out and getting photos yourself. And a lot of the work is being done for you, which to some people that's great. And to others, they'd rather a little bit more challenged to getting great pictures. And that brings us to talk about the near part of far and near. So local shooting is a whole different ballgame. I am almost always by myself when I do photography in this area. And I do a lot of work. I don't just get on a plane and a truck. I spend a lot of time researching. I study the subject, their behavior, the time of year that I might find them. And then make a plan, put that research to work, figure out where to go and what to look for. And then you wait for the right time of year and the right conditions, and you go out and try and get the species. I go a step further. I keep all my gear in my trunk of my car. I probably have $30,000 worth of equipment in there. I'm not going to tell you which car it is out there. But it's just, you never know when you're going to see something. And I usually go out every night on a little, I call it my evening safari. And I drive around to my spots and it's going to be the same animals, but who knows? They might be doing something interesting tonight, right? It's the thrill of the hunt for me. I consider myself to be more of a hunter than a photographer. And the best thing is you get to have a trophy without having to kill something. So that's my thrill, is to get these wonderful pictures. And with local shooting, time is on your side. You live here, right? So you can go out time after time. You could go out month after month, year after year, and you know the place so well that now you're just looking for special opportunities. So when I get a picture of something that I've been studying, that's the best part for me about local photography and the most satisfying part. And to be honest, with all the thousands of dollars I spent going on these overseas trips, I wouldn't trade them for anything. But my most satisfying experiences have been here at home. How do you do it? Well, you got to get closer to the animals, right? And it's not always easy to do. This is me in a wooded area wearing a ghillie suit. For those of you who don't know what a ghillie suit is it's a lightweight fabric, and it's got little shreds of fabric all over it, camouflage, that look like leaves. And it's really easy to get in woodwork here and get a shot of a bird or something that's coming right at you even. I don't do much of this because, this is in Hanover County. And what's the first thing you think of when you think of sitting here in the woods right here, right? So I don't really like getting ticks because they always go where I can't reach. And I don't do much work with the ghillie suit on. Another way of going about it, a little cleaner, is to use blinds. And this is basically a hunting or a photo blind. Not the greatest match to the environment, but really what matters is that an animal that sees a stationary object, most of the time, birds included, are much less fearful of a stationary object than they are of the form of a human, especially a moving one. So if you can get a blind and get there before the animal gets there, that's the best way to use it. In this particular case, a friend of mine had a farm, and he was allowed to hunt deer, and he had other people hunt them. And when there was a deer carcass, the first thing that would happen would be what comes? The vultures. And the vultures get on the carcass and they're feast on it. But if there are eagles in that area, the eagles will usually take over the kill. And that's what was going on here. And he told me about it. So I brought a blind, and I got here. This is November. It was freezing outside, and was able to get there before sunrise. And sure enough, the eagle came. He went right to the kill and started eating. And I must have moved just a little bit or made a sound. And he just snapped his head around and looked right at the camera. And it was just a great gotcha moment, but only able to do that because of a blind. These days, I use a different kind of a blind a lot. Probably a lot of you do the same, in using my vehicle, my Jeep out there as a blind. And you can see that, it's stationary. And if the animals are already there, sometimes they don't even run when you pull up and you're able to photograph them. And I take my Jeep on these trips that I consider to be local to places like the Eastern Shore or North Carolina. So I'm already driving 3 hours. Then I'm driving around looking for critters and animals. And then I'm shooting from the car, and it's like 15 straight hours in the car. And as I was sitting in physical therapy last week, getting my back worked on, it became a little more clear to me that I'm only shooting from that side of the car, and I'm twisting that way. And guess what? My pain is on the lower right back. Should have been able to figure that out sooner. Okay, the other thing you want to do is talk to locals. This is down in Dutch Gap. I don't know if anyone's ever spent any time down there. There's a character down there. I don't think he goes anymore, but his name was Larry. And Larry could tell you more about local wildlife than any other person I've ever met. The problem was he was stone deaf, and you just had to listen. You couldn't really ask him a lot of questions, but if you listened, you would get a wealth of information. And I have to credit him with some of the beautiful shots that I got of foxes and other animals down in the Dutch Gap area. So you also want to keep current of opportunities that are happening. And one of my thoughts of what I want to do in retirement is to make a calendar, sort of a living calendar that tells me when things are happening all year. And I know they do that in Virginia Wildlife Magazine calendar, has some of that type of information, but I know where to go for my spots. And just being able to do that throughout the year and take advantage of some of these opportunities. Examples of that might be if you know when the chicks of different shorebirds might be hatching, put that on the calendar. We talked about how the shad are running in April, and when the shad are running, the ospreys are coming too. And this makes we probably all have shots similar to that if we've gone after the ospreys in the James River. And then you also keep in touch and find out about birds that aren't usually in the area that are visiting. So an example of that would be at the Chamberlain Swamp. Has anyone ever been over there? The Chamberlain Swamp oftentimes has anhingas, which is usually a Florida bird, comes there. And if you have connections and you're following things like the listserv from Audubon, you find out about opportunities like that. And like this is called a limpkin. This is another Florida bird. Very rarely would be seen around here, but he was visiting Three Lakes Park, and he stayed there for about a week, and the word got around. And what do? You grab your camera and head over there and watch him pounding open these freshwater clams. It was a very unique opportunity and a rare bird for this area. You also see a lot of wildlife doing wild things as part of their cycle. And again, this has the warning for the PG-13. So if you could close your eyes or turn your head. But all kinds of, you see anything out there, and they're not too shy about it. We all know that the 2 times you can photograph an animal without them caring are if they're eating or if they're doing something like that. And even the snakes get in the act. Usually the smaller one is the male, by the way. And sometimes these animals are, pretty discreet about it, but sometimes they carry things a little bit too far and get a little too romantic, like this spin on the old Cialis commercials. Okay, so I'm going to show you some of the local subjects that I like to photograph over the years. These are some of the parks and places that I like to visit. It's most of them are known to just about everybody. You could take a picture of that slide, maybe. But some of the ones that I like the best in the battlefield parks in Hanover County are great for deer and some of the other wildlife that I'll show you. I spent a lot of time down in Dutch Gap until I found out how unhealthy that place was. And due to chemicals of, all the Dominion and whatever else is down there. So I haven't been too much at Dutch Gap anymore. And I think they've really cleaned a lot of that up. Bird and Maymont parks, the James River parks down by the river, which would be Pony Pasture and the wetlands. These places are all great places to visit to those of us who live in such a populated area. And other areas that I consider to be local, even though they're a little bit farther away, kind of far away, might be the Eastern Shore, which is the Delmarva, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia Peninsula, the Outer Banks area in North Carolina, and going west, you have Shenandoah National Park, which is probably the best local place to see black bears. I have Florida on here, and you notice I've also had that on my travel destination list. And so Florida is kind of like in the middle for me, because if I'm taking my gear and going down to Florida on a bird trip, then that's a travel destination. If I'm going to see my 91-year-old mother for a few days, I'll bring a camera with me, but that's a local trip. I'm sneaking out at night and early in the morning to steal some shots. These are some of the pictures I've taken right around this area. These were the days of the great blue herons. And you could just, if you did it enough, you get all of their behaviors, right? You get the nesting and the fishing. This is a shad, and making nests and doing all kinds of stuff. And that's really where, like I said, that's where I got my start. I don't know. I don't know what makes a rookery not be a rookery anymore. I don't know where it is, but I've heard they have another destination somewhere on the south side. Somebody's got.
Somebody's talking in the audience.
Yeah, it was an incredible experience when those nests were all there. There's the numbers were right downtown. It was just really a wonderful opportunity. I was going to say something about this picture. As you all know, the Eagles have made a strong comeback on the James River. There's eagles everywhere that I go, the Eastern Shore. They're really, Florida, really made a good comeback from when they really were endangered for a while due to some chemicals like DDT and things like that. But the shout out here is to Mike Ostrander, Captain Mike, who hopefully you all got to go on one of his tours. It's so amazing to go with Mike because he knows all the eagles. They all have names to him, and he's really good at positioning the pontoon boat so it's in the right light, and he's able to attract them. He's a fisherman too, and he brings fish to feed the eagles. And you know, it's kind of like not exactly what you think of as a wildlife experience, but it's a great way to practice and a great way to see the eagles out there. Yeah, this one, you know, when you have a 400 millimeter lens, you're a cropper because you know you don't have the reach of a 600 or an 800. So I do a lot of cropping. I think though with some of those shots, we were probably like this one was next to Mike's boat. It was probably only about maybe 30, 40 feet away, right? Does that sound right to those of you who've been out there? Yeah, he'll actually hold the fish up, and the eagle, he can tell right away if it's hungry or not, just by the way the bird postures. And if he's hungry, he throws it out there. And some of the best shots are not these shots, but they're you know, when they're turning and doing these big angles with their wings. It's really an incredible experience. This is a pileated woodpecker that was alongside the river at Pony Pasture. Does anyone know how to tell male from a female? Any birders out here? So this is the biggest woodpecker and in the area. It's a woody woodpecker type. And this is a male because he's got this red streak. What's that? Okay, okay. And am I right here though? Yeah, the red mustache is usually associated with the male. This is a bird that shows up at Dutch Gap just about every year. It's called a least bittern. This is another Florida bird. They like to, if you've been to Dutch Gap, you know the plants that grow out in the marsh in the summer. For some reason, this is their type of breeding ground. And I've watched these least bitterns carrying sticks and doing nesting type behavior and reported that. So it's listed as a possible breeding bird here, but I've never seen a nest, and I don't know about anyone who has seen babies either. So it's fun to go watch them, and because they sort of pop out of the plants and then pop down into another plant, and it's really a fun, another whack-a-mole type experience. This is a ringneck duck. And the reason I put this in here, has anyone ever Googled your name? Everybody's done that, right? You Google your own name and to see what comes up. Well, if you're a photographer, that could get really interesting because this is a time when I Google my name, and what I came up with, Rob Sabatini, what I came with was this article in the Audubon Society. And I saw the article and I was like, wait a second, how'd they get my picture? Because that's my picture I just showed you. And then I realized that these contests that all of these magazines run seems like they're doing us a favor, and you know, oh, here's this nice contest and you got second place and all of that. Well, that's great, but what they're really doing is expanding their base of photos that they actually go back and use in their printed and their online magazines. So here's my picture in an article about changing the name of the ring-necked duck to the ring-billed duck, which is what most people call it anyway. And yeah, well, that, I don't want to make that recommendation myself, but I'd be really happy if you did that for me. Yeah, so anyway, this is the ring-necked duck. They never did change the name, but my picture lives on in infamy. And, there's two ways to look at that. I look at it as sort of an honor and a compliment. Hey, they actually chose my picture to use in a publication. But I know plenty of people who will not submit to these contests because they don't want to be freelance photographers that are not getting paid, to get published. I really don't mind. Oh, the other thing that you see sometimes when you Google your own name are things that, either you don't remember or you say, well, is that really me? And
Another self-portrait.
I heard a famous quote from Brenda here today that said something like, the older you get, the more you remember things that never happened. Is that right? Okay. So, yeah, so I looked at that picture and I was like, I know I used to look like that. I do remember that. But I don't remember this contest over here. And I think I had less hair than that at that age. So I dug a little deeper and found out that that really was me in the picture. Okay, another great opportunity down in the water of the James, the Atlantic sturgeon. And again, hats off to Mike Ostrander. He used to run a sturgeon watching cruise in the fall. I don't know if he still does that, and this wasn't done from that cruise. But the Atlantic sturgeon obviously comes from the ocean, and they come to breed in September, October timeframe. And what they do is swim upstream, and they come up the James River up to the Mayo Bridge. And that's the tidal barrier. That's as far as they can go going upstream, at least that I have been told. So you have these Atlantic sturgeon, and when the water levels are high, when the river is high, they actually come all the way to the bridge, and you can see many more of them doing this jumping behavior, which is thought to have something to do maybe with their breeding cycle and the loud sound they make when they hit the water. I don't really know if that's true, but these are magnificent fish, and they are very prehistoric, maybe 7 up to 8 feet long, and they have these scales that are actually made of bone, which is just fascinating to see. So trying to get a picture like this is almost impossible because there's no prodrome of them jumping. You don't know where they're going to come out. They just pop up and then they hit the water. So I ended up shooting like a rifle, looking over the barrel of the lens and not through the viewfinder. Had a long depth of field, tried to open it up to f/16 or something like that. And I had to narrow my range of looking. I couldn't cover 180 degrees. So I could only look, okay, I'm just going to look in front of me. And you just hope that one of them eventually jumps and you get the shot. And I was pretty lucky to get this one, and I submitted it to Virginia Wildlife, and they actually made a cover out of it a few years back, 2021. So if the water is high, if the river is high, think about this in the James River, either out on a boat or close to the Mayo Bridge. Deer, deer are almost like pests to a lot of us. They eat our foliage and our landscaping and things like that. And they're so common that you almost take them for granted, kind of like the great blue heron. But I love going out in the evening looking for them because the more I'm out there, the more I'm going to catch them in a beautiful pose or something like that. These are all at Shenandoah. You see a winter, fall, and spring shot in the left, center, and right. And these are just really, really nice photos in the snow and the flowers. And hiding in the grass. The ones that are the best are when you see something unique or interesting. And one evening I came across this, and the light was coming from over here, and it just looked to me like a scene from an enchanted forest. I love that picture, and I loved getting that shot. And even more interesting was this guy. I mean, he is, if a deer could be my hero, it would be him. I don't know exactly what happened to him, but he looks pretty stoic and strong, and he's carrying this wound in his neck. And if anyone does any hunting, you know that a hunter aims right around here. And I talked to a couple of deer hunting type people, and they were convinced that what was happening here was that he probably was strafed by an arrow. The arrow missed the target, but it cut through his skin. And that makes sense to me, the way it cuts across like that. It's healing, and the deer seems like he's doing fine. And I'm really thankful to get that photo of him. The fawns are starting to come out now. I've seen one or two. It's always nice to get a feeding shot, especially around Mother's Day. And then this deer, I had really no idea what was going on here when I first got it. I know what it looked like was going on. And I didn't put a PG-13 on it, but I think it was a male. He's a pretty husky guy. And he's over there at the edge of the woods just hanging out. So I got the picture home to try and figure out, what was going on. And I started playing with it. And I don't really like to Photoshop my pictures. But in this case, suddenly when this happened, the whole picture made sense to me. But really what he's doing, you can see the vegetation is all gone here. So he's just standing up to reach the higher leaves. This is another great moment, and it's like the more you're out there, the more you see things like this. These two does came to each other from opposite ends of the field, and they slowly approached each other, and they got to be almost nose to nose looking at each other. I've never seen anything like that in my life. It seemed like something territorial was obviously going on. And then there was, I knew that there's going to be a moment here because something's got to break the tension, right? So suddenly this deer right here in the foreground stood up on his back legs. And this happens to be the way deer fight. They stand up and they beat each other in the head with their hoofs, and somebody wins and somebody runs away. Well, in this case, this doe wanted to fight, right? And this doe wanted no part of it. She took off, and just ran out of the scene. And this picture to me is the iconic picture of fight or flight, right? We all learn about it in school, and I think it should be in every biology book showing fight or flight, the sympathetic nervous system. Black holes are some of my favorite things to look at in trees. Whenever I am driving, I'm looking at the black holes or looking for hawks or whatever. And this one just looked like a perfect hole to me. And I stopped the car and I sat there for a minute, and I thought I was kind of far away, and I thought I saw a little movement down in this corner, the bottom of the nest, and then got a little closer with binoculars and eventually with the camera. And it turned out to be a raccoon's nest, and that was the mama raccoon peeking out to take a look at me. She obviously heard me and wanted to see what was going on. And it's a good idea not to pressure situations like this. I mean, you should feel very lucky when you find it, but I would visit every couple of days or so, and certain times when I thought I might see activity. This is one of the babies poking his head out. This is probably one of my favorites right here with mama poking out and a little raccoon above her. And you think about that small, confined area, that little hole to squish through, and then having to sit there. I don't even know how many babies were in there and how exhausting that must be for the mom to go through. I was there early one morning, and the mom poked her head out, and it was time, I thought, to go get some food, right? Because the babies are probably hungry. And she squished her way out of the nest, and I expected her to go down, but she went up. And I looked up there, and I didn't see anything that would be interesting to eat, and wondered what was going on. And it turns out that raccoons, like just probably any species, including humans, sometimes they just need a break. And she just needed a break, right? So let the baby sleep, and I'm going to go up in the tree and sprawl out here. Fascinating. All around this area, there are tons of owls. The great horned owl is the biggie, and then probably the more common is the barred owl. You can find them in some of these parks. Just go out in the evening and listen. And if they're mating and things like that, or pre-mating, you're going to hear them call each other with that classic barred owl. Does anyone want to do it? The barred owl thing? Huh? No, there's a saying that goes with the barred owl call, and it's who cooks for you. So when you hear one of these guys or gals, they're saying like, there you go. And it's who cooks for you. And then you know they're around. And if they're around in the same area every night, then you start looking for the nest. So they do nest in areas like pony pasture and the wetlands. This was really lucky to get that. It was terrible light. It was dark out in the forest. And this is, I think these were both parents tending to that nest that year. You keep at it. And if you're around enough, you might get to see some special moments. These were two barred owl siblings. And I found them, they were just calling. It was mid-afternoon. They were hungry. And so mom eventually showed up, and she had a little bird. It's hard to see on the right picture, but it's got a little bird. That one, and so they both got a little meal that day, and there was a sad mama. I don't know if these were blue jays. I couldn't really figure out what kind of bird they were. All kinds of other stuff in the forest to look at. This is a fence lizard on a fence of all things. This is a phoebe on a similar fence, and these are in some of the Civil War parks in Mechanicsville. And this is a Luna moth here. These Luna moths, this was just about 2 weeks ago, and I think they only come out for about 1 week of the year to find a mate and take care of that, and then they're gone again until the next year. So I just happened to spot this deep in the forest and thought, well, it doesn't really look like a leaf growing out of there, and sure enough, it was a beautiful Luna moth. Plenty of turkeys in this area. These are the wild turkeys. The domestic turkeys usually have like a white band of feathers on the outer rim. This is what you see here in the wild. And of course, we're blessed with tons of little birds. I wouldn't even begin to show you all of the bird photos I have. I have a lot of fun going out in the snow, trying to get them. Sometimes a little bit of seed next to the thing helps. And this is one of my favorites. It's a goldfinch. And to me, he's on a thistle. And he's playing the game, she loves me not. She loves me, she loves me not. This is a yellow-bellied sapsucker on the left side and a nuthatch on the right. And I could go all day showing local bird photos, but there's plenty out there to capture right in this area. This is one of my favorites, obviously in one of the battlefield parks. This is a Civil War cannon. And I just happened to notice this bluebird kind of going back and forth, and it was actually building a nest in the cannon. I don't know if it was successful because I didn't keep going back, but I just think this is fascinating picture. It's a bluebird and a gray cannon, Civil War. And then sometimes you just get lucky. And I was out one evening where I had seen some baby foxes with a mom, and my obsession for the next few days was to get the babies playing in these yellow flowers. And that never happened. But luckily, my consolation prize was that this cardinal landed right in the middle of it and made for, you know, kind of a lucky, beautiful shot. And another thing to look at is for unusual color patterns in animals. And it could be any species. This happens just to be a regular squirrel in downtown Richmond. And I saw him scurrying around this building, and I was like, what the heck? And he was pure white through and through. Now, sometimes you can have a white squirrel, and sometimes you can have an albino. And just with any species, what to look for is the eye. And if the eye is pink, then it's probably an actual albino. So this is an albino squirrel. Unfortunately for him, he's pretty easy to spot if you're a hawk or something like that. And I think they probably have a shorter life expectancy. Okay, so putting all of this together for local photography, do your homework, make a good plan, try and get there before the animal if you can, and then you just have to have tons and tons of patience. And the example I'm using here is the wood duck. I made it a chore of mine to study the whole life cycle, and I wanted to capture every stage of it. I did my homework, and this is what I found out. They start pairing up sometime in the winter. Wood ducks obviously nest in wood, so they're either in tree trunks or wood boxes that people set up for them. And what they do is, after they're mating, the female will fly into the nest once per day. And what she's doing is dropping off an egg and then leaving the nest. So usually, to my viewing, it was in the afternoon, mid-afternoon. The female would come in and drop an egg and then leave and not stay for the night or anything. Then once all the eggs are laid, so this could be 10 or 12 days in a row, then she'll start staying in the nest. And that's by design, so that all the eggs could be incubated for the same amount of time. And that lets them all hatch at the same time. So you know that once she's staying in the nest, they're going to incubate somewhere around 30 days, 28 to 37 days. So now you're out there, okay, I got to get there every morning and see if this is the day when I'm in this time frame. And then I know that they're all going to hatch together, and usually the very next morning is when they come out of the nest. So let's see how we made out here. The plan was to go to Dutch Gap, where you see a lot of the wood duck boxes out in the shallow water. This is what they look like. And it's all fun and games in the winter. And then you pick out your perfect box with the perfect angle. And then the grass starts growing and the leaves start growing on the trees. And all of a sudden you could barely see the box. So the real challenge here is to isolate a visual path to the nest. Getting there first, I was there every morning for probably over a week, getting in my spot, being real still and waiting to see, if that would be the day. So get there first and you'll see ducks landing, you'll see them swimming around, you see them start pairing off in the winter. Here you see a little bit of competition going for this hen, but that goes both ways. Here you see two hens with a male. And it looks like he kind of made his mind up there. I don't know how aggressive that actually was, but obviously he favored this one on the left side. And before long, they're paired up, and they'll stay together for the whole season. And eventually, you know what's coming, the PG-13 sign on the picture. And there it is. This is the big event. And after that is when the female starts to come to the nest to drop the eggs one at a time each day. So here she is scoping around to see if everything's safe. A lot of times the male comes with her in the early days of this. I don't know, the males eventually seem to lose interest a little bit, but maybe while he's still enamored with her, he comes with her and she'll actually jump off and whip around and go right into the hole. And this is what it looks like. She's jumped off and now she goes and enters the nest. So for the first 10 or 12 days, she's going to lay an egg and a few minutes later leave. And the way I will know that the incubation starts is when she starts to spend the night. And from that moment on, it's perseverance. It's like, I got to go every day. I got to make the donuts. I got to wait for this thing to happen. And if I'm lucky, I'll see it. And sure enough, one morning, these pictures might not be all from that particular morning, but the hen was in there overnight incubating. Not incubating, but these eggs were hatched the day before, right? So all the little chicks are in there, and she's ducklings, and she looks both ways and jumps out and lands somewhere down at the base of the nest in the water. And what she's doing is swimming around, making sure everything's clear. This is really amazing to watch, trust me. And then she'll actually come back and go back in the nest. There's some kind of a briefing going on in that. Like, I'm a military guy, right? So I can imagine what this briefing must sound like. Okay, the coast is clear. We're going to jump out when I give the signal, and this is going to get done. And mind you, this is a one-time deal. Once they're out of the nest, that's it. They don't go back in. So she goes back in the nest, and they're conducting this meeting. And while that's happening, some really weird things started to happen. So the hen is back in here. And all of a sudden, this kingfisher lands with a crayfish, and decides to take over the photo shoot and eats this crayfish up on the nest. But that wasn't the end of it, because right after that happened, a possum showed up. I've never seen a possum at Dutch Gap. And I was so still, I could be a statue. He walked about 3 inches from my toes, came from the left to the right and just kept going, never knew I was there. A few minutes later, I looked to the left and there was a raccoon out there at the shoreline. So I'm fairly certain that, whatever happened in here, those predators could smell it. And I think they were thinking they might have a shot at getting some ducklings for breakfast that morning. So the kingfisher left, the possum and the raccoon left, and sure enough, the mother jumps back out of the box for the second time, lands, looks around, and she started actually calling the ducklings to jump out of the box. And this is what I saw. Probably these were the more aggressive ones of this clutch of little baby ducks, and they couldn't wait to get out of there. They just leaped out, a big leap of faith. They didn't know where they were going or where they were going to land, and immediately they just instinctively start flapping their little wings, which are completely useless. And they drop like rocks into the water. Now, I've seen this. I don't know if you ever watched the show called Documentary. It's one of those nature shows. These nests can be over ground, like 80, 90 feet in the air, and they still do this. And they land on a pile of leaves and they just bounce and they're fine. So I watched 12 of these jump out in about 1 minute flat. And it was one of the best minutes of my life, and part of it was just being able to witness that. And part of it was the satisfaction of, having this project come to that kind of fruition. The mom gathers them up and, eventually you start seeing them swimming around. Every week or so, there might be one less there, and that's just nature. They think maybe about 1 out of 10 or 2 out of 10 baby birds survive all of that. And this is a shot that I took of a mom watching her ducklings. And does anyone see anything else in this picture? Yeah, this is the arch enemies, the snapping turtles out there, and they'll gobble up those ducks in the early days, and you can watch them go down to 2 or 3 in just a few days because of the turtles. Okay, that was my original presentation, and I thought I would add something. Hopefully, are you guys okay to keep going? Because I think this is pretty interesting right here. These are the wildlife refuges down near the Outer Banks in North Carolina. There's Alligator River, which most of you probably heard of, and another one called Pungo Unit of Poquoson Lakes. So this is what the area looks like. Here's the Outer Banks out here. If you go across into Manio, the island here, and then keep going, there's Roanoke Island, and keep going, you end up back on the mainland. And this is Alligator River National Wildlife Refuge. The sister to it is Poquoson Lakes, and the Pungo area is over here. So this is the area where you find some pretty rich wildlife. There's lots of birds there, but you really have to be going a lot and looking for them. This is just the cattle egret on the right, but you see these tundra swans that come and stop over in their migration. This is a bobwhite in the center. Don't see too many of those out in the open. You hear them a lot, and these are called king rails, which are kind of rare to find, and was lucky enough to find them there. There's lots of barred owls. This one was eating a crayfish, and this one was doing some kind of an interpretive dance on the branch. And one day I got lucky enough to get a barn owl pop out of the canal and just fly around in the field, give me a chance to practice my new autofocus on my Canon R6 Mark III. These are some of the other critters there, possum and raccoons, and this is a timber rattlesnake, which is very dangerous, so you have to always be careful out there. And this is a nutria, but there's also plenty of otters out there too. Those aren't the reasons people come to these nature preserves. It's actually these two guys right here. They're tons of black bears in that area, and of course the red wolf. Are you all familiar with the red wolf story at all? No? Okay. Well, you will be in a minute. So this is a black bear, and they're just really fun to photograph. The way to do these parks is they have dirt roads that you just drive around, and you look for bears, and you look for other stuff. And when you see one, you just sort of stop for a minute and try and get a good picture. The arrangement there is that the farmers leave part of their crop. So they have an arrangement with the National Wildlife Refuge. They leave maybe 10 or 15% of the crop for the animals, and that keeps the animals interested in staying there. This is a big black bear. These bears will go out in the corn, and you won't see them till it's time to go home. They eat all day long, just eating corn constantly, getting ready for the winter. If you see a picture like this, which I have many of, the backside of one running, probably is a good chance you got a little too close. And you have to be really careful and respectful of the wildlife. In these refuges around the country, the general rule is most wildlife keep at least 25 yards away. And for things like bears and wolves, they like you to keep 100 yards away, which is pretty far. That means you shouldn't approach them closer, but if they approach you or just show up, in your area, well, then that's a different story. That's not really abusing the system. A lot of beautiful shots of the bears here. There were some sunflowers, and this is a shot I really wanted that day. I've seen them up in the trees. This was after a thunderstorm, and this bear was way up in the tree and coming down backwards, which is how they climb down. You can get some beautiful shots if you go enough and are looking out. This is a nice misty morning with a mama and two cubs going down the road. And this is one of my favorites. It's kind of a young bear. And what's he doing? Well, you think he's looking up at the sky saying a prayer or something, but what he's really doing, his nose is pointed right at me, and their sense of smell is so keen that they just put their nose up in the air to figure out what's happening. So this was because of me, and I'm very proud of that. And it made for quite a pretty picture. I was even able to do a dental exam on him, honestly. Another one of my favorites from Pungo was this cub out in the middle of all this soy, nice geometric design to that one. And little cubs staying close to mom, always make for good photos. Now, the bears are always hungry. It's kind of like, remember Yogi Bear when we were younger, the cartoon trying to get the picnic basket? Well, the bears are hungry all the time, and they don't like these signs that say, do not feed the bears. So when they see one, they try and destroy it. And if they can't destroy it, they try and change it. So this one painted over do not, and it just became feed bears. I'm not sure if anyone ever really fell for that one, but it was a good try. They also can be very aggressive when they're searching for food during certain seasons. And this is a little story about not the big bad wolf, but the big bad bear who said, I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll whatever, blow the house down. This was a photo blind that we use quite often. It's also used for hunting in the hunting season. And there was a bear who really wanted to get inside of here. They usually keep the door closed, and he literally ripped it off. And when I checked around the back and the sides, here's the forensic evidence that it was indeed the bear. Some probably left a wrapper or a little piece of food in there, and he was very determined and successful to get it. I went back to this to see if they had repaired it a couple of weeks later. I actually went inside and poked around a little bit. And when I was coming out, this is what I saw. This bear was about 30 feet away from me, if that, 20 to 30 feet, not yards. He had just crossed the canal, and he didn't know what was going on any more than I did. He didn't even see me yet when I took this picture. But when you see a bear like that, you have to think, what am I supposed to do right now? I don't have any bear spray. Not that I would necessarily use it. I didn't have any noise to make it. And I just thought, well, I'll try and get a picture of him. So that's what I did. I pointed at him. And luckily, I couldn't get the whole bear, but that was enough for that shot. And once he smelled where I was and looked, he got on all fours and took off. He was more afraid than I was. And sometimes, you just have to really get lucky in these situations. And there was a day when I was it wasn't Alligator River, it was at Pungo. And there were 4 bears, actually 5 bears, coming down the trail toward me. There was another photographer there too. And they obviously wanted to take the trail and go through where we were and keep moving. And they got a little close and then they just stopped dead in their tracks. And it was a mama bear and 4 cubs, which is very rare for bears to have 4 cubs. And the way they stopped was this scene right here. It only lasted about 3 seconds, but I could not have directed them to stay in a better pose than that, like a family photo. And you can even see the mama bear, she's trying to teach them how to cheese for the camera, how to smile, and they didn't really want any part of that. And I said there were 5 bears, and there were. There was a 5th bear, probably a little boy, right? And he just didn't want to get in the picture. So a very special, rare moment for that one. This is the last thing I'm going to talk about. It won't take long. These are the red wolves. And there is a population of red wolves in North Carolina that is the only wild population anywhere in the world. It's a fascinating story. The red wolf is one of only 2 indigenous species of wolves in the US. The gray wolf, obviously out west, and the red wolves, which at one time, as early as the 1800s, covered all the way from a range of Texas to New England. They were very plentiful, and they were eventually weeded out by not able to get food as the cities grew and the whole East became so populated. And people used to also shoot them a lot too. This is where we're looking now. This is off the back on the mainland around Alligator River. And there was always a population of captive red wolves that were being kept alive and bred in Texas and Louisiana. And from there are wolves that got sent to other places of captivity. So this area right here, the Fish and Wildlife Service decided, we're going to bring back the red wolf. We're going to repopulate this wolf. This is where they did it from. They were originally from this area. The ones they got were from out in Washington State somewhere, but they brought them here. And this is how it went. They were labeled as extinct, totally extinct in the wild in 1980, but they still had these reserves of captive ones. In 1987, they brought 4 pairs of the red wolves to North Carolina, and the population for a time did pretty well. I think they got up to about 120 wolves in around 2012. So things were going the right direction, and then things went haywire. Wolves were being shot. Wolves were being shot on purpose because farmers and landowners didn't really like them there. They would say they thought it was a coyote. People were actually running them over with cars. And by the time I got interested in this project, there was only about 10 or 15 wild red wolves left, all in North Carolina. Things are going a little better now. There's been some successful breeding the last couple of years, and they think there's upwards of almost 30 of them now. So I'll just show you a few of the pictures of this critically endangered species and what a wonderful animal it is. Some of the efforts are signage on the highways and roads, even at night. These are the first red wolves that I saw. It was the first thing in the morning. And these were not good pictures. I was a mile away from these. These are really heavily cropped shots. But I went home so happy that day that I actually saw them, because they're so, you don't just go down and see them. You have to go and go and go and persevere on this. So I kept going, and I said, maybe I can get a better shot. And one day I was driving, I was driving along on one of my trips down there on the dirt road, and I came to this intersection, and I slowed down. It was inside the refuge, and I had the camera up on my window, hurting my lower right back. And just as I passed the intersection, I noticed this guy just standing there off the side of the road. He didn't expect to see me. And we just stood there looking at each other, and he was wondering what I was going to do, and I was wondering what he was going to do. And I just was able to get some amazing shots. I think at this time there were only about 16 or 17 of these in the whole world. And I was standing there with one of them. Again, just a really amazing feeling. The red wolf probably had a common ancestor. The red and gray had a common ancestor many thousands of years ago. And a lot of the arguments now are, is this really a real species that we're protecting? And this organization called the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine did some genetic testing and determined this is a real species. But the controversy still exists because the farmers and other people say, well, there's still crossbreeding with coyotes and maybe even dogs, and we don't really believe it's a pure species. These are some of the shots I've got of the red wolf. This one was just standing out there, really happy with that one. Yeah, oh, I forgot to mention, normally when you see some kind of a tracker on an animal, that's like a red flag. Well, I don't want a picture of that. That's some person put that on him. This is different though, because this is a species that there's a handful of them left, and these people are trying hard to repopulate them, and they have to have ways to know where they are, where they're going, things like that. So when I have a red wolf picture, I'm actually glad that it's on there so somebody can't say, well, that's just a coyote. So this is clearly a red wolf. He had a collar on. And this is after later in the scene. But the way this started was I was entering the park over here and came around this curve, and I saw this red wolf way up in front of me. And I thought, well, is there any way in the world that I can get a picture of that? And my plan that I came up with was to drive behind him really slow. And I knew that at some point he would jump off the road and into the grass. And I would just go past him like I never saw him and then stop further up the road. It's like a genius idea, right? So this is after I went past him and waited for a while. And sure enough, I was kind of far away over here. And sure enough, he started coming back down that road because that's where he wanted to go. And I got a few shots of him. And finally, he came pretty close to me. This is cropped a little bit, but he came pretty close before he saw me and smelled me. And that's where he stopped and then turned around. He didn't run away, though. And he just walked back down the road and came up with another path to get where he was going. But got a couple of really close, nice shots of it. And, they're pretty. Could that be a coyote? I don't know. They're a little bit taller. They're kind of skinny. But to me, they're just a beautiful animal. And this is the last little scene I'll show you. Same intersection, different day. Remember, there's 17 of these red wolves left in the world. Got there at sunrise, entered the park, going super slow with my camera on my window, and got to that very same intersection. And this is what I saw. 3 of the 17 remaining wolves in the world here on this little road with a black bear. And I don't know, you can make up your own story in these situations, like what's going on here. My theory was that the bear might have had a cub, and these 3, I think there were 2 siblings and a mom, maybe smelled it and had an idea, but the bear had wanted no part of that, whatever that idea was. And here you see, it looks like they're playing and having a good time, but they're both kicking up a little dirt, and the bear was just telling them to go away and get out of here. So will this species make it? I don't think anybody really knows for sure. But one of the pictures and this is one of the last year's pups, so that was my goal for last year, to get one without the collar. And this, Brenda was with me that day, in fact, helped me maneuver the vehicle to help get me a little closer to them. And this is the mom with the red collar, and this is one of her pups with no collar. So mission success. And finally, my last picture I'll show you. A lot of photographers try and make some kind of a deal about their missed shots. And they say, look how beautiful it is. It's like an impressionist painting or whatever. It's just a missed shot. And that's what this was. I jumped out of the car. I saw him over here, and he ran. And my focus caught this grass over here. So he's just a blur, right? But when I think of this species, and now I'm doing what I said the other people do, but you think of this species that's, living between the cracks here, not even knowing if it's going to be a species anymore. And it's just such a nebulous picture of it sort of maybe fading into the woodwork, who knows? But to me, that's kind of a gorgeous impressionist painting of a red wolf. That's right. That's right. Was that other monkey you with the Nikon? Okay, so that's the end of my presentation. I'm more than happy to answer any questions anybody would have about anything. Thank you. Okay.
Keep hearing the owls. Darn if I can locate where they're coming from. Do you have
Yeah.
any clues on how to
Yeah,
circle around? and
the
do that?
nest that I showed you, it was from the wetlands. And I didn't know they were there. I just went to see what was out there. And the best time to go is right before sundown. And then you stay for a while and just listen. And when I went multiple nights, I could hear two of them calling each other, and they were in the same area. And then the game is just to try and figure out where they're going, right? They're very sneaky about not going right to the nest. So I was staying there till after it was almost like dark and watching, okay, where's this guy going? Then I get the general vicinity. And now you just narrow down your field each time you go until you actually see it go to the nest. So if you just go out there and look, you're probably not going to find it. You have to hone in on it over several days. But once you hear that and you hear it coming from the same place, okay, it's got to be right here somewhere.
Question was, how far out were those wood duck boxes?
Okay, so the wood duck boxes were only maybe 20 feet, 30 feet off the shore off the bank of the marsh. And I was right inside the bank of the marsh behind the tree line, hiding behind a tree with a tripod and all that. And so I was pretty close to them. I had a very small, by the time these guys came out, it was a really small window to shoot through. And that's why I couldn't get the mom down there swimming when she jumped out. But, if you could ever do that and look it up and follow how much time in incubation, it's just probably one of the most rewarding, adventures I've had in photography. My goal now is to find a natural tree cavity nest to make it more nature. Anyone else? Yeah, no, it's hard. I
My
mean,
question was, how much of a challenge is it with lightings, et cetera? Yes, this is the voice in the box.
That's how you do assisting.
the assistant. So this was a very tough thing to get because you're filming motion. Obviously, you need light, right? I'm in this little window that I'm working with. It's early in the morning. It was still not sunrise. And everything is against you with the light. I don't think I could have got this before these new cameras with the autofocus systems that they have that are incredible. And also with the low light capabilities. I think if I had a 600 lens, I might not have got it because that's a f4, not as much light as so I'd rather crop it and have enough light than not crop it and not have enough light. So there's a lot of things that, but when you're going out there every day for 30 days, you got plenty of time to think about this and figure out, okay, what's the best way to get these shots? And I couldn't really track the bird with the focus, the little tiny ones. I was just lucky they were jumping in a plane that was almost the same plane, distance away from me as the box. But yeah, there's a lot of difficult things about those pictures.